Hi there, this is Miss Pucci, and welcome back to our unit on inventors. Today we're going to be talking about inventors of transportation. Now, looking at the background, you can probably guess at least one of the things we're going to be talking about today, but I want you to consider what other things might be important in regards to transportation. Our lesson objectives stay the same. We're still going to connect some inventors to their most important inventions, but we're going to focus especially on how these inventions impacted the people at the time and throughout history. So let's meet our inventors. Our first one is a bit non-traditional. This is not an individual person. This thing was invented so long ago that we actually don't know who came up with the idea for it, but we can at least credit it to the group as a whole of the ancient Romans who were in power from 753 BC to AD 476. That's a really long time. Now, of course, we're going to flash forward in history a bit to the 18th century where we have James Watt and to the 19th century where we have Henry Ford. The ancient Romans, like I said, were in power for a super long time. If you're struggling to understand that date, just remember you can kind of think of the BC AD thing as a timeline that has negative numbers on it. So, for example, here's our negative 753 BC. We're going to throw year 1 in the middle here. So, imagine this like your negative number 753, 752, 751, all the way up to year 0 or year 1. Then on the flip side, you have year 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 476, all the way up to 2020. So that's how that works. So that's why they were in power for almost 1,000 years, but it's a little hard to tell just because the numbers are they're flipping from the negatives to the positives, so to speak. So, they had a huge impact. For example, they built over 2,000 miles of roads, and some of them are still in use today. But they also came up with some non physical things. For example, sure, you can invent physical things that you can touch and use, but you can also invent ideas, which really can propel history a ton. For example, the Romans came up with a lot of ideas about government, how to run an efficient military, how to think philosophically, how to come up with logic, and they came up with a lot of our laws regarding math. Now, they did invent something pretty important that is physical, and that is the Roman aqueduct. So I want you to consider what that might be. First, we're going to read a description of it, then we're going to look at a picture of it, and then I'm going to show you how one works. They took about 500 years to build, and you're going to see why. They are pretty monstrous. But before we turn, I just want to show you where in the world the ancient Romans were in power. So this is a modern map. Of course, the United States of America did not exist when the Romans were in power, but we live here. Europe is over here in this red circle, and I just blew it up down here. The Romans had control of everything here in orange at one point. And the Romans actually they had power of more of this at some points, less than this at some points. They were constantly in struggles of power where they try to take land from other people. So this is just a little snapshot of what their empire looked like at one time. Pretty cool, right? So now let's read about the aqueduct. You can go ahead and read with me. The Roman aqueduct was a channel used to transport fresh water to highly populated areas. Aqueducts required a great deal of planning. They were made from a series of pipes, tunnels, canals, and bridges. Gravity and the natural slope of the land allowed aqueducts to channel water from a freshwater source, such as a lake or spring, to a city. As water flowed into the cities, it was used for drinking, irrigation, and to supply hundreds of public fountains and baths. Do you have a vision in your head of what it might look like yet? Let's look at some of the underlined words and see if we can piece together what it might be. Okay, so the aqueduct was a channel, so like a stream, I guess. A stream, and it was used to transport or carry fresh water to highly populated areas. So we wanted to carry water to areas where there were lots of people. Why? At the very bottom of the paragraph, we find out, oh, duh, we need to get this water to people for drinking, irrigation, or for farm work, and to supply hundreds of public fountains and baths. Fun fact, they all bathed together. They had like a public bath where you'd go whenever you wanted to take a bath, but it was less about keeping yourself clean, and it was actually a social thing. You'd go and hang out with people in the baths all the time. That's what they did. So they needed lots and lots of water. So how did they do this? This is what it looks like, but it's not quite what it looks like. The aqueduct is the structure, not the water at the bottom. So whenever we talk about the canal or that channel, we're not talking about the water that's going across the bottom of the screen. There's actually water that's going inside of that big arch structure. Now, I'm having some trouble playing videos, so I'm just going to skim through here and show you some snapshots of what I mean by that. So once this loads for me, maybe. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to just show you some pictures. So of course, the goal was to carry water as far as possible. Uh-oh. Okay, this is a good image to be stuck on. For some reason, it won't work. Oh, okay. But basically, they just took those tubes or those channels, and then they dug through mountains, they dug through hills, they dug everywhere they could, and they poured the water in it, and then they built it over to avoid any problems with traffic. They built them and they put them inside of those big archways. So I'll show you in this picture here. There's actually a tube of water running the whole way across here. That's where the water is coming from, and that's how they carried the water. So you can see it didn't interrupt travel. It really didn't interrupt anything, but it did take 500 years to build, which is a super long time. All right, so now let's jump to James Watt. He lived from 1736 to 1819, and he lived in Scotland. He was an instrument maker and an inventor, but he did not invent an instrument. Fun fact, if you've ever heard of a watt, like in terms of electricity, it was actually named after him. Why? Well, he invented the steam engine. Correction, he didn't invent it, he improved on it. That is a big theme that we have noticed here with a lot of our inventors like Nikola Tesla with the AV current. But he improved the steam engine big time. So down on the bottom right corner of your screen, you're going to be able to see a little picture of what an early concept of the steam engine looked like. But what was it? Basically, it's an engine that's powered by steam. And these steam engines powered the first trains, ships, factories, and even cars. The invention of the steam engine actually started a whole era in history called the Industrial Revolution, which is a time when industry, like factories and transporting things with trains, became the new big thing. This started making money like crazy, and it was able to transport things all over the world. This was unheard of at the time, which is why we call the time from 1760 to 1820 the Industrial Revolution, and the steam engine was fully responsible for it. So James Watt had a huge impact. Finally, we have Henry Ford. He was born in 1863 in Michigan of the United States. He died in 1947, and, not surprising, he was an automobile manufacturer. Have you ever heard of Ford, like the car? Fun fact, Ford actually worked for Thomas Edison because he started fixing watches as a teenager and was observed for his high skills. And so he worked for Edison for a long time. So right off the bat, people knew that this was a highly qualified and highly skilled individual. You shouldn't be surprised he invented Ford Motor Company, and he invented the Model T, which was not the first car, but it was the first car to be widely available and cheap enough for the public to use it, which was also crazy and unheard of. You could see a little image of it down in the bottom right corner of your screen. That was the 1908 Model T. But most importantly, he invented what is called the assembly line. And an assembly line is where you have a moving object and people stand in stations and they put things on the car or they fix the car as it goes past them. So every time, for example, say I'm responsible for a certain screw. Every time a car would come past me, I would screw in that screw and it would go past me and the person next to me would do something else. Now, you'd have a little bit more responsibility than that, but it just made the process of making cars go so much quicker. In fact, let's read the quotation at the bottom. This new technique decreased the amount of time it took to build a car from 12 hours to 2.5, which in turn lowered the cost of the Model T from $850 in 1908 to $310 by 1926 for a much improved model. So, instead of having a bunch of guys standing there all trying to put a car together while it sat in front of them, not anymore. The people stood still while the car went past and they'd put things on it as it went past them, which made it go a ton faster. I do have a video for this, but since the videos aren't moving, we're going to move on because we're flexible and we're okay with that. We're going to go on to our review. Remember, the ancient Romans invented the aqueduct, James Watt invented the steam engine, and Henry Ford invented the Model T and the assembly line. As always, here are my sources, and that is all I have for you for today. So now you need to proceed to the Inventors of Transportation Google form, fill out that quick quiz, there's an assignment for you there, and if you need help, ask your teacher or find me on Twitter at juliapucci.edu or on my website at www.juliapucci.edu.weebly.com. You can also ask your friends if you need help connecting or with a tech issue, but please don't ask them while you complete your assignment. That is all I have for you today. I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.